I know you're not talking about eyelashes when your policies barely blink at poverty. Jasmine Crockett fired across the table, her voice calm but cutting. The chamber fell still. The kind of still that makes your skin remember where you were when history got loud. A beat. Then gasps, stifled laughter, one audible "oh" from the back. Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't need to. Her hands rested calmly on the desk, shoulders back, gaze locked in like a trial lawyer who already knows the jury has made up its mind. Across from her, Marjorie Taylor Greene blinked. Once, twice, then froze. No comeback, no smirk, no fire, just silence. Like someone realizing too late that they'd brought slogans to a subpoena. It was live. It was uncut. It was happening. In that frozen second, the internet did what it does best, explode. TikToks were already editing the moment into gospel. Twitter had clips bouncing between echo chambers. Crockett, cooked, rocketed to the trending page. "Not the lashes, girl," one tweet read. "This woman just dismantled MTG without breaking." "A sweat," another echoed. And the cameras were still rolling. Marjorie opened her mouth, then shut it. Someone coughed. Crockett arched one eyebrow, leaned back, and waited. Dignity doesn't rush. But while everyone focused on that moment, something deeper was unfolding out of frame, off camera, behind the scenes. Because what no one knew, not Crockett, not Greene, not the millions watching, was that just hours before the cameras turned on, Donald Trump had quietly made a phone call. A cancellation. A distancing. A cold exit stage right from the woman who once carried his banner like a crown. He was done with her. For now. And what happened next? Well, it turned a single sentence into a political earthquake. But how did it all come to this? Let's rewind. America wasn't just divided, it was vibrating. Red versus blue had calcified into something deeper. Identity wars, book bans, border standoffs. Congress had stopped pretending to play nice, and 2024 was barreling toward the nation like a freight train with no brakes. In one corner stood the far right's most unruly megaphone, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Loud, unfiltered. She thrived on chaos and camera time, her rhetoric engineered for virality, not legislation. Her job wasn't to build, her job was to burn. In the other stood Jasmine Crockett, a freshman Democrat from Texas who carried herself like a seasoned prosecutor. Calm, surgical, a master of restraint. Where Greene would throw matches, Crockett would lay out facts like evidence on a courtroom table, daring you to contradict her without crumbling. They weren't just two women. They were two visions of what America could be and what it refused to become. MTG represented a boiling point in the MAGA movement. Conspiracy-laced populism, religious nationalism, and grievance as performance art. Her speeches were less policy, and more performance designed to incite, not inform. She had allies, yes, but she also had limits, and in smoky back rooms, even her own party had started whispering, "She's becoming a liability." Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett was the new guard. Young, black, Southern, unapologetically sharp. She didn't scream. She didn't flail. She just delivered. From floor debates to oversight hearings, her following swelled not because she was loud, but because she was lethal without raising her voice. She embodied what the next generation of progressives wanted. Not just energy, but discipline. The stage was set, not for a debate, but a collision. Greene needed a headline. Crockett didn't. Greene wanted to provoke. Crockett was waiting ready, armed and unbothered. And while the world was tuning in for fireworks behind closed doors, Trump was tuning her out. He had read the polls. He had seen the donor memos. The Marjorie Taylor Greene brand was starting to sour. Too erratic, too extreme, too much. And Trump, ever the survivalist, knew when to retreat from a sinking ship, even one he helped christen. In a quiet Mar-a-Lago back room, he began making his pivot, not with a press release, not with a tweet, but with absence. And in politics, silence is strategy. What no one knew as the cameras were being mounted was that Marjorie Taylor Greene was walking into that studio more alone than she had ever been. Before the camera ever rolled, the betrayal had already begun. She burst onto the scene like a thunderclap, raw, unfiltered, and completely unconcerned with decorum. Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't just elected to Congress in 2020, she crashed into it, fists up and facts optional. Within weeks, she had turned the halls of the Capitol into a theater, a backdrop for her brand of political spectacle. Her rise was meteoric. She didn't just ride the MAGA wave, she surfed it, screamed from it, monetized it. Her social feeds became a war room, churning out conspiracy theories and firebrand declarations like campaign flyers. QAnon? She danced with it. School shootings? She called some of them staged. Masks? Tyranny? Vaccines? Questionable. Every headline she hijacked became another pixel in her digital empire. For her followers, she wasn't a politician. She was a weapon, a walking rebuttal to political correctness, a blonde battering ram wielding grievance like gospel. And at first, the party let her. The GOP needed fire. She brought infernos. She raised money, went viral, and bullied her way into committees she hadn't earned. She was chaos with a microphone, and for a while, that was enough. But power has a short attention span, and Greene didn't evolve, she escalated. By 2022, her antics weren't just embarrassing Democrats, they were making Republicans wince, shouting over colleagues, accusing fellow conservatives of being weak or deep state. She'd turn on anyone, no loyalty, no brakes. And then came the moments that made even her most ardent defenders uneasy. The time she compared mandates to the Holocaust. The time she heckled the president during the State of the Union. The time she aligned herself with white nationalist figures, then played dumb when pressed. Each moment brought media attention, but not the kind the party could keep spinning. Donors grew wary. Committee chairs kept their distance. She wasn't a rebel anymore, she was radioactive. Behind closed doors, Republicans started to pull the emergency brake. Staffers called her unmanageable. Senior members whispered about stripping her influence. And slowly the very movement she helped electrify began to outgrow her. But none of it seemed to faze Greene. She walked the halls like they were hers, still believing she had Trump in her pocket. After all, hadn't he called her a rising star? Hadn't she spoken at his rallies? Hadn't she defended him through indictments, impeachments, and everything in between? That was the illusion invincibility. Because what Greene never seemed to grasp was that Trump's loyalty has always been transactional. Useful until you're not. Loud until you're inconvenient. And lately, she had become inconvenient. The base loved her drama, but strategists saw a liability. Her name, once a rallying cry, had become a risk factor in swing districts. Her voice, once the pulse of the fringe, now sounded off-key to a party trying desperately to look moderate again. And Trump? He was growing tired. The calls came less frequently. Invitations, fewer. She still name-dropped him, still claimed the mantle. But the Mar-a-Lago doors were no longer opening the same way. Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't see it, or refused to. She still strutted into hearings with that signature sneer, still believed she was untouchable. But the whisper campaign had already begun. Her colleagues were lining up against her. Her influence, once unshakable, was starting to slip through her fingers. And then came the moment she stepped in front of the cameras to go toe-to-toe with Jasmine Crockett, still believing she was the apex predator in the room. Still believing Trump had her back, but she didn't know the betrayal was already public. Jasmine Crockett was born in the South, where the air is thick with history and every name carries a story. a black girl raised on conviction and consequence. Her mother was a school teacher, her father a service worker, and her community, though often overlooked, was loud with pride. She didn't grow up with power. She grew up with purpose. From a young age, Jasmine saw the world for what it was, not what it claimed to be. She watched neighbors get swept up by injustice, friends misjudged before they ever opened their mouths. So she studied, listened, filed it all away. And by the time she was old enough to raise her own voice, she had one goal: to make the system answer for itself. She became a lawyer not for prestige, but for defense. Not to wear the robe, but to protect the people so often silenced in front of it. Criminal defense, civil rights, voting access, her docket read like a battle map. And she won not by shouting, but by showing up armed with the truth, spoken plainly and without fear. In the courtroom, she didn't pace or perform. She delivered, calm, focused, dangerous in her quiet. A kind of discipline that made even seasoned prosecutors take notice. Her questions were surgical, her pauses timed. And when she looked at a witness, they knew they couldn't lie their way past her. That same presence followed her into politics. When Texas tried to suppress the vote, she marched. When they passed laws that silenced communities like hers, she stood in the well of the chamber and said, "Not on my watch." Her voice never wavered, even when threats poured in, even when critics questioned her every move. "I wasn't raised to back down from bullies," she once said, staring down a far-right legislator who thought volume could substitute for substance. The room had gone silent. Everyone knew she meant it. When Jasmine Crockett stepped onto the national stage, she didn't come to blend in. She brought her entire identity with her black, Southern, unapologetically brilliant. A woman who knew the difference between chaos and clarity, and chose the latter every single time. In congressional hearings where ego usually outweighs ethics, Crockett sat like a calm storm. While others postured for clips, she built cases in real time. She didn't interrupt. She dissected. Didn't rage. Just recalibrated the entire tone of the room with a look and a line. She wasn't there to trend. She was there to hold the line. For truth. For process. For every person watching at home who had been talked over, lied to, or ignored. And the people noticed. Clips of her methodical dismantling of disinformation went viral. Young women wrote essays about her. Teachers replayed her speeches in classrooms. Her rise wasn't loud. It was earned, because Crockett wasn't about proving she belonged. She was about showing what happens when preparedness meets power. So when the cameras turned on that day, when Marjorie Taylor Greene stormed in with her insults and her arrogance, when the trap was being baited in real time, Crockett didn't flinch. She had seen bigger bullies. She had cross-examined liars with better poker faces. She knew the truth didn't need theatrics, it just needed to be delivered by someone unafraid to speak it. And she was ready, because her courtroom wasn't just a courthouse anymore. It was Congress. The stakes were higher, the consequences broader, but the rules hadn't changed. If you're telling the truth, you don't have to yell. If you're right, you don't have to rage, you just need to be precise. And when the time came, she didn't miss. The hearing room was tense before the first word was spoken. You could feel it like a wire pulled too tight. Members shuffled their papers with unnecessary energy, eyes darting between each other, waiting to see who would throw the first match. Then came the voice everyone recognized, loud, cracking like a whip. Marjorie Taylor Greene. She didn't address the topic. She addressed the moment, her moment. She leaned in with a smirk and spoke with the confidence of someone convinced the cameras were rolling just for her. "This committee," she began, "has turned into a joke, run by radicals who'd rather play victim than fix the damn country." A few heads turned. Crockett didn't. She sat back in her chair, hands folded, one eyebrow raised like a teacher waiting for a student to finish mispronouncing every word in the book. Green pressed on, voice rising. "We're not here to make TikToks or show off." "Our eyelashes," she snapped, eyes locked in Crockett's direction now. "We're here to talk about real issues. But some people would rather dress up and play activist than actually serve." The words hung in the air. A pause. One heartbeat. Two. Jasmine Crockett didn't speak. Not yet. She simply tilted her head half-smile, eyes unreadable. She had heard worse. She had seen this move before. Green wasn't debating policy. She was baiting a fight. And then she went further. "I guess if I screamed racism every time I didn't get my way, I'd be on cable news too," Green jabbed, her voice laced with mockery. "But some of us came here to work, not to wear victimhood like a designer label." The air drained from the room. A few staffers looked away. One aide dropped their pen. On the other side of the dais, a Republican leaned back and crossed his arms, as if bracing for impact. Even among allies, there were limits, and Green had just stepped over them. Jasmine Crockett still hadn't said a word. Her hands remained steady. No flinch, no notes. Just that same quiet calculation behind her eyes. A calm so practiced it was almost poetic. Green, sensing the silence as weakness, doubled down. "You know what the American people are sick of?" she barked. "Pretenders. People who run on identity and offer nothing but drama. We need real voices, not race baiters and courtroom performers." It was no longer about policy. It was personal. Crockett slowly looked up. Not flustered. Not angry. Just ready. The kind of ready that came from every courtroom where she'd had to prove her intelligence in front of men who thought they were smarter. The kind of ready that came from being underestimated, interrupted, and insulted but never undone. She adjusted her mic. Green leaned back, smug. And then Jasmine Crockett leaned forward and dropped the hammer. Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She leaned forward, calm as a metronome, adjusted the mic like she was settling in for a gentle reminder, not a takedown that would ricochet across the country. "Madam Chair," she began, tone precise, razor-edged, "I'm just trying to figure out how we're supposed to have a serious conversation when the loudest voice in the room doesn't seem to have brought a single fact with her." The room shifted. Green's smile faltered. "But let's get into it," Crockett continued, locking eyes across the aisle. "Since Congresswoman Green would like to talk about who's performing, maybe we should ask why someone who spends more time in front of cameras than in committee meetings wants to lecture anybody on work ethic." A few muffled laughs. Someone coughed to cover a smirk. Crockett didn't blink. "She wants to talk about victimhood?" "Baby girl," Crockett said, voice dipping with the kind of velvet warning that comes from women who have had to fight twice as hard to be heard. "I wasn't born with the luxury of playing the victim. I had to work twice as hard for half the microphone." Gasps. Audible now. A senator muttered, "Wow," under his breath. Someone behind the camera checked their phone. The clip was already hitting Twitter. Green tried to interject, "Excuse me," but Crockett held up a hand. Not to silence, to finish. "She talks about real issues?" Crockett's eyebrows rose. "Let me educate her. Real issues are kids who go to bed hungry in her district. Real issues are veterans getting denied care. Real issues are teachers being forced to buy their own classroom supplies while she's out here selling bumper stickers with her face on them." Green's expression hardened. She tried again. "You don't get to—" Crockett didn't flinch. "What I don't get to do," she said, now fully owning the floor, "is sit quietly while a woman who believes in Jewish space lasers tries to lecture me about what's real." The chamber erupted. Gasps turned to stifled laughs. The gallery buzzed, like a live wire. On the second row, a staffer covered their mouth with both hands. A C-SPAN camera caught one member mouthing, "Oh my God!" Green was stunned into stillness. "And while we're at it," Crockett continued, voice rising just enough to be undeniable, "let's stop pretending that being loud is the same as being right. One of us came here with receipts. The other came here with recycled tweets." The shot cut to Green, jaws set, arms crossed so tightly they looked fused. Her eyes darted to the chair, then the clock, then nowhere. Crockett paused, timing, always. Timing, and delivered the line. "I don't know who needs to hear this," she said. "But when you don't have an argument, you just shout louder. And if that's your whole platform, then baby girl, you've already lost." Silence. A silence so thick it felt like the room inhaled and forgot how to exhale. No one moved. No one dared. And then the feed lit up. Crockett cooked. Baby girl. Jasmine Crockett just turned MTG into a footnote. Clips flooded the internet within minutes. TikToks layered her words over gospel choirs, trap beats, cinematic violins. Twitter threads dissected every sentence like scripture. "This is how you handle a bully," one said. "This is what restraint looks like when it's done with precision," another added. Cable pundits were already calling it the moment of the hearing. Some called it the clapback of the year. Others the pivot point for Crockett's national profile. And Green? She was frozen in place. She tried to recover, muttered something under her breath, but the room had already moved on. The committee chair thanked Crockett and shifted the floor, but the energy had changed. The balance had shifted. For the first time in her congressional career, Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't the loudest voice in the room. She was the one who got schooled. Not with rage, not with volume, but with truth, delivered like testimony. And across America, millions watched, replayed, and reposted. Not just because it was satisfying, but because it was symbolic. This wasn't just a takedown. It was a reckoning, a moment where preparation beat provocation, where identity stood strong against insult, where a calm Southern black woman reminded America that intellect wasn't weakness, and that dignity, when wielded right, doesn't lose. But while Greene was licking her wounds, Trump made a decision that shocked even his own supporters. The clip had barely cooled before the fallout began. In the days following Jasmine Crockett's viral moment, cable news loops couldn't stop replaying the takedown. Conservative panels debated it. Progressive hosts praised it. Twitter was a war zone of dueling reactions. But one thing was clear. Crockett had landed a direct hit, and Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't walking it off. The hashtags never left the trending page. Crockett cooked. Baby girl, Congress, clapback. Even late-night shows joined in with monologues dedicating full segments to Greene's silence and Crockett's precision. On TikTok, creators stitched Crockett's now iconic line into lip syncs, reenactments, and mashups, with everything from courtroom dramas to drag race finales. Crockett wasn't just trending, she was ascending. And Greene? She was unraveling. Within days, the political winds shifted. Quietly at first, strategically, Trump's team made no official announcement. They didn't have to. Greene's name disappeared from an upcoming Florida fundraiser where she was once slated as a special guest. Her speaking slot at a right-wing student conference vanished from the online agenda. MAGA-aligned influencers who once boosted her quotes suddenly pivoted to new voices. Fox News, once her safety net, featured back-to-back segments questioning if Marjorie had gone too far. The criticism was soft, but coordinated. "She needs discipline," one guest suggested. "She's off message," another warned. "Trump's trying to go broader," said a third. "She's not helping anymore." It wasn't exile. It was abandonment, a slow, strategic freezing out. The kind Trump had perfected. One moment, you're at the rally. The next, your phone stops ringing, and the base noticed. On Reddit forums, whispers turned into threads. Has Trump moved on? In MAGA circles, she went from fighter to fiasco. Some still defended her, claimed she was being punished for telling it like it is. But others? Others were glad she'd been checked. "She's too much," one donor reportedly told a journalist. "Bad optics," said a strategist. "Uncontrollable," said another. But the final blow came when Trump posted a video hyping his 2024 America First team. Green wasn't in it, not a single frame. Crockett, meanwhile, kept rising without saying a word. She didn't gloat. She didn't grandstand. Her silence was louder than Green's rage. Her composure had become the story, and that contrast, that was the real shift. In an arena that had rewarded chaos, here was a woman gaining power by not shouting, by not scheming, by not spinning every moment into a circus. Crockett was being elevated because she had chosen discipline over drama. The internet responded in kind. Fan art of Crockett as Ruth Bader Ginsburg with hoops. A t-shirt line featuring "Baby Girl," "You've Already Lost." Podcast interviews. Editorial praise. Profiles that once buried stories about women of color in the political margins now led with her name. And every meme that lifted Crockett made Green look smaller. In her attempt to dominate the conversation, Marjorie had become a punchline, a meme frozen in time, a lesson in what happens when you confuse volume with value. Poetic justice, because Crockett didn't have to overpower Green. She simply outlasted her. And in doing so, she showed millions, especially young, progressive, identity-proud Americans, that grace is a form of resistance, that intellect can be revolutionary, that you don't need to yell to take up space. It was emotional whiplash in real time. The loudest woman in Congress had just been silenced by the calmest, and the one with dignity left standing was the one still rising. But this moment was bigger than two women. It was about what America is becoming. There was no victory dance, no mic thrown, no social media tirade or victory lap. Jasmine Crockett didn't need any of it because the moment spoke for itself. What lingered after that hearing wasn't the sound of a raised voice or a slur shouted into the void. It was the quiet confidence of a woman who knew who she was and who refused to let anyone else define her. Crockett didn't take the bait. She didn't meet chaos with chaos. She met it with clarity, with calm, with the kind of grace that silences even the loudest bully in the room. And in that silence, America heard something it hadn't heard in a long time in politics. Self-respect. There was power in the way she paused between words. Power in how she never let her opponent dictate the terms. Power in the way she turned insult into opportunity not to lash out, but to speak up. Marjorie Taylor Greene came into that hearing with a spotlight. She left with a shadow. And Crockett, who never asked for center stage, walked away with the nation's attention earned, not demanded. Because dignity doesn't shout. It stands, and it reminds us that democracy was never meant to be a circus. It was meant to be a conversation, a hard one, yes, but one rooted in truth, not tantrums. Crockett embodied that truth, not just with her words, but with her restraint. She reminded Americans that composure isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That being deliberate isn't dull. It's dangerous to those who thrive on distraction. And in doing so, she offered something we rarely see in these divided times. An example of how to handle ignorance without becoming it. Of how to push back without losing ground. Of how to represent without performing. Her response wasn't just a political moment. It was a cultural one. For every person who's ever been talked over in a boardroom, interrupted at a dinner table, underestimated in a classroom, this was a reckoning. A reminder that you don't have to raise your voice to raise the bar. She showed us that grace is not passive, it's pointed, it's practiced, it's powerful, and it is the antidote to arrogance. In the days after, Crockett said little publicly about the encounter, but when asked in an interview how she kept her cool, she offered a line that now echoes in classrooms, captions, and conversations across the country. It's not about being loud. It's about being right. That sentence, simple, elegant, and unshakable, may well become a mantra for a new kind of leadership. One that doesn't scream to be heard, but speaks to be understood. In the end, Green lost more than a moment. She lost control of the narrative. Crockett didn't just win a verbal sparring match, she reshaped the expectations for how power is wielded in the halls of Congress. And if this was just the beginning, imagine what comes next. What Jasmine Crockett did in that moment wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a reminder. A reminder that truth, when delivered with grace, can outshine any circus act. That calm doesn't mean passive. That dignity doesn't mean silence. That standing your ground can look a lot like sitting still and saying exactly what needs to be said. This wasn't about ego. It wasn't about theater. It was about something far more urgent: representation, decency, leadership that doesn't trade facts for applause or values for virality. Crockett didn't win because she was louder. She won because she was right. And that matters, because the stakes are bigger than one hearing, bigger than one headline or hashtag. This is about the kind of country we're becoming and the kind of voices we're choosing to amplify. Are we backing bullies who perform for the cameras? Or are we standing behind truth-tellers who carry their communities with them? If you believe in voices like Jasmine Crockett's, subscribe, share, speak, because this isn't just a clip. It's a signal that America is hungry for leaders who don't just talk, but deliver. That we're tired of the noise, tired of the games, tired of the clowns. And more than anything, that it's time to trade chaos for clarity and courtroom calm for congressional courage. The fight's not over, but it's finally being fought the right way.